Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Shared Services Link and sponsored by AppZen. Today, we'll be looking at the Smith & Nephew GBS Highs and Learnings case study, specifically zooming in from 2016 to 2020. My name is Sarah Fain, and I am the Head of Content at Shared Services Link, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Phil Priest, the SVP of GBS at Smith & Nephew, and Sam Majad, the Business Development Director at AppZen. So let's just touch a little bit on context for the webinar today and why this topic is so important. For shared services and global business services to maintain their relevance in the world today, you need to evolve to meet the changing needs of the business. So today we are going to look how Smith & Nephew has launched, grew, and evolved their global business services and how they're leveraging cutting-edge technology and driving improvements into customer service. Specifically, we will dive into some of the lessons from Go Live, some of the do's and don'ts. We'll be looking at their end-to-end processes, some of their transitions and successes. And towards the end, we'll be looking at the technologies that have really proven their value. And we'll be taking a bit of a deeper dive into a really interesting T&E transformation story with some excellent savings and some insight from AppZen as well. I would now like to hand over to Phil from Smith & Nephew.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'll start the story really with a little glance at Smith & Nephew. We're just over a $5 billion company. So in revenues in 2019, we're over $5 billion. We made it into medical devices. We have 3 business units: our sports, which is joint repair and ear, nose and throat surgery; orthopedic reconstruction, so replacement hips, knees, shoulders; and an advanced wound management business. There's about 17,500 employees globally, and we've been traded on the FTSE 100 for many, many years. Crazy start as we paid a dividend every year since 1936, even in the COVID crisis. I think we might just manage it, but it's a challenging time for us. What I'll talk about next is the shape of our business. Got some products around here that you can see. So negative pressure therapy that helps heal wounds, knee replacements, hip replacements, some surgical instruments that surgeons that use our products use, and some cutting edge joint repair and joint replacement technologies. So I'll really talk about our global footprint now. The news about our company: very, very old company, started in 1856 in Hull. My office is still in Hull, but we operate in over 100 countries around the globe. So it's a challenge from the number of entities, for example, that we have to manage in the finance services organization. Back in June of 2016, I joined Smith & Nephew. The job was to build a global business services organization, which was really our idea phase. And the first things we did was move some HR services into some footprint we had already in Costa Rica and Pune. And then we started to think very differently with the board about where we would go next. And with the advent of that, we decided to insource finance from our transactional processing from a company called DXC, who were great during the insourcing. They were really helpful to us, despite the fact they were losing the business. And then from that, we grew that base of finance to a multifunctional through 4 centers: one in Costa Rica serving the Americas, one in Poland serving Europe, Middle East and Africa, one in Pune serving really the globe, and one in Kuala Lumpur serving Asia Pacific. As we built from the base of finance, we then started to scale and added more and more functions to our footprint, and we started to move into end-to-end diagnostics and improvements, and I'll talk a little bit more of those in a minute. I'd like to just share with you on this slide the sort of extent. We've got a sort of mixed model. We have direct reporting, so things that report directly through to me as the leader of GBS, and we've got a few services that we operate under a landlord model, although we have some quite rigid rules about how they operate in our centers and what we do. And you can see we span a lot of things. So IT support, all the desk side support, all of the help desks, HR services. We run the service management capability for the whole organization. We have finance services, which includes transactional finance. But in our centers, we have controllers, so country controllers. So we're lights out finance operations in country. The only in-country teams we have are our finance business partners, who are really commercially focused or operations focused. But procurement operations, health, safety and environment, real estate facilities, master data, a shared service of program management for the organization. In our centers, as part of our landlord, it includes core IT, includes finance planning and analysis, includes some regulatory complaint work that we do. In our industry, we're a medical device industry, we have to report patient complaints to the relevant authorities and report our remediation. We've also got some compliance and legal support, some sales support and customer services. So we're a pretty broad GBS. And now what I want to talk to you about is the phases we went through in the building of that journey. And we call it operate, optimize, and transform. Now, operate is really the lift and shift, the move from a high cost location to one of our operating centers. And we started that in 2018. And in functions like finance and HR, we've largely made that move. We still are doing some moves where we're moving from a high cost to our service center locations, but largely speaking, the traditional functions you would move have already moved. Once we've got it moved and we've got it settled and stable, we then start to look to optimize it. And that's where we look at ongoing methods to improve the way that we operate the processes, really looking end to end, looking at the synergies between the things that we put in the center. So if, for example, we put customer services in the same place we put cash collection, so our contact with our customers is connected with one another. And then once we've gone through and removed as much waste and got the processes as good as we can get them, we start to apply digital techniques. And that really is, as simple as don't automate waste. I'll talk a little bit later about what we're doing in the digital world. So if I really focus on that first stage of optimize and now talk to you about our operate phase. 4 centers we've got a little satellite in Colombia that helps us with South America. We've got quite a big business in Colombia as a result of an acquisition we made there. So we have a satellite there that really is run out of Costa Rica. Those 2 centers run the whole of the Americas from a language and knowledge point of view. Wroclaw runs Europe, Middle East and Africa. Kuala Lumpur runs Asia Pacific, and anything we can do that's rules based and language agnostic, we run out of Pune. So lots of processing, lots of knowledge capability comes out of there. And our IT is balanced between Poland and Pune, and we're increasing our footprint at the moment in Pune. Just to show you the success of some of our operate activity, I just posted this little eye chart at the bottom. This is our country KPI chart for finance services. The left-hand side of the chart is what the KPIs looked like when we were working with our outsourced provider. And the middle of the chart, you see it starts to go yellow and then goes green. During the transition, we went green. When we were fully green everywhere, we knew we were stable and we could then move on to the next phase of the changes, which I'll talk about as we move on now in the presentation. The next phase of what we did was all about optimize our processes. And we really, really have focused on true end-to-end. So the little chart on the top left here you can see was our schedule of end-to-end process improvement that we carried out from October 19. And we carried on while the COVID crisis has been going. So we really went from source to pay, not purchase to pay, but source to pay. So sourcing processes, purchasing processes, our processes by which we receive goods or receive services and how we then pay our vendors. We looked at quote to cash, right from the quote through to collecting and allocating the cash. We looked at our intercompany processes from the trigger of an inventory movement right through to reconciling the balances in our accounts. And we also have done a diagnostic on R2R. And actually what's missing off there, we're just doing a HR diagnostic at the moment on onboarding and offboarding. So we really have gone end to end. Use value stream mapping and remove the waste. We heavily invested very early on service management. A previous webinar that we did, we talked about the service management capabilities we've created. Thanks to Hackett for that diagram. We really have followed the Hackett model for service management. And you can see at the bottom there, we have 3 scores of customer satisfaction, which is critical to us. So we have the customer experience score, and we ask the question, whenever we do something for them, how easy was that? We have the customer satisfaction score, was how well did we do? How good was it? And then annually, we have an NPS score. We're just sending out our 2020 NPS survey to our entire organization right now. So we really look at those things. And then critically important to optimize is our team engagement. Have we got a great team? Are they engaged? Are they well trained? Are they capable? And we use the Gallup Q12 survey. In the last year, we've really focused on the scores from that survey. We do it annually, and then we do a little taster one in Q1 to give us a feel for how we drive an improvement. In our KL center, which was not superb in terms of the Gallup score right at the beginning because of the pressure of transitions, we really focused over the last year on trying to drive improvement there. The Gallup score is out of 5. In KL, we got a 1.0 increase in score. They've never seen that before in the Gallup survey, that somebody can move that much in the survey. So we really have heavily focused, and we had increases in every center, not quite as big as one, but really good size increases in engagement from our teams during the last year, and we're really focused on that. If I now start to talk about the transform phase, we've gone from operating our processes, making our processes better, engaging our people, getting them engaged. We're really now heavily focused, and this year has been our year of true digital transformation. We use digital in many ways. The broad base of digital, we have cloud-based applications that support us like Workday, etc. I'm not going to talk about those. I'm going to talk about some of the tools that we've used that bolt on or support our core applications. So the first area I want to talk about is what we've used digitally to discover our processes. We use an intelligent process discovery tool that looks at what our people do, that sits on their desktop and looks at what they do and helps give us advice and where we can optimize further the process, but importantly, where digital application of maybe RPA or a bolt-on would improve the process. We've also done some work with a bespoke tool that looks at your ERP application and tells us where we're underutilizing the capability of that ERP application. Specifically for us, it's SAP. So real investment in digital process discovery. We intend to invest more going forward in that area. We have invested in robotics. We haven't forgotten the simple stuff like macros and .NET, but we have got an Automation Anywhere platform sitting on Microsoft Azure Cloud, so we can deploy it anywhere and we can scale it. And we've done, today, I think we now have 27 bots running, and we've got a pipeline of about another 30 applications that we're working on. And then the final part of this that I want to talk to you about is we've really looked at bolt-on digital technologies that enable us to provide our service in a much better way or do our service much better. Just a few of them here. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about what we did with AppZen in a case study in a minute. But we've got a bunch of other tools, you recognize the names, all of which we've applied into and we really do work a lot on visualization of our data as well, so that our teams can understand where they are in the journey, how they're performing, and use that in our daily management techniques, from our daily huddles right through to my leadership dashboard and actually the CFO's leadership dashboard. What I want to do now is to jump straight into a real more detailed case study. T&E was one of the first process areas that we migrated. We run global T&E out of Costa Rica. You probably saw in early 17, end of 16, early 17, they were the first place we moved some processes to with Costa Rica. And the T&E area, we've gone through the whole operate, optimize, transform agenda. And we started off really very process orientated. So we migrated the T&E support over into Costa Rica, lift and shift from largely led out of Boston, Massachusetts. Fully onboarded the team by the end of Q2 in 2018. And we started our first chapter of our transformation journey in that time period, really optimizing the end-to-end process, working heavily with Concur, understanding the tools. And towards the end of that year, we introduced the AppZen Detect technology. We'd been playing with it a little bit. And what we did in that transformation and the connection with AppZen was really heavily looked at what we needed to do with our T&E. We're a life sciences company. In life sciences, anything we spend on healthcare professionals, hiring them for seminars or research, we have to declare, especially in the US, an act called Sunshine Act, we have to declare every cent. So it's really important we itemized our T&E. The problem was we had the whole company itemizing the hell out of everything just to make sure we didn't miss HCP spend. So we really revolutionized the way we itemized. We put de minimis in. When you're using a credit card and you're not spending on a HCP, you didn't even have to put a receipt in if you were spending less than $75 in the US. That meant that we couldn't claim any indirect taxes back on that spend because we didn't have receipts. But actually, when we looked at the cost of claiming the indirect taxes back versus the cost to the organization in time to actually declare all that itemization, we found $75 in the US and £50 in the UK was a pretty good cutoff point for the balance point around cost. And we had a lot of manual audit, and also managers approved the T&E. We completely removed a chunk of the manual audit of this implementation. I'll talk a little bit more about it as we go further on. And we took away manager approvals. We used the AppZen tool to approve. And we had to do a lot of training, and we saved, at that time, when we looked at manager approvals plus our employees entering their T&E, we reckoned up we'd saved about getting on for 8,000 hours of employee time. We then started to focus on the output. What could we learn from the fact that we really revolutionized T&E? How can we pull out analytics and start to give our senior leadership a better view of the analytics coming out of T&E so they can understand where the T&E spend is? We put in a VIP executive support. So So we really made it simple and revolutionized the way our VIPs used the T&E. We piloted some tools where it self-populated their T&E, and all they had to do was go and look, check it, and push the button or add on things that were missing from that T&E. Really took a lot of time out of that T&E, and use the AppZen tool to further evaluate the VIP T&E, where the CEO can't check his own expenses, so it's being checked by the CFO at the time. We then went through another transformation phase, really starting to say, right, how can we get more out of the processes, more out of the investment we've made in the AppZen tool set and detect. And that next phase, and also looking at expenditures for fuel in the US, that next phase where they were on fuel cards and we switched them to credit cards, we now got to 10,000 hours saved globally, which is a lot of time. I mean, you're a Salesforce driven company, Salesforce saving 10,000 hours, that's up to 10,000 hours more in front of a doctor, which is really critical in our business. COVID hit, so we did a lot of expenditure analysis to see where we could drop expenditure quickly, what we could do, what we could change. We took the downtime where we were processing less T&E to redefine completely the way we did audit and really, again, leverage more and more of Concur Detect. We did a lot of educational stuff to help our employees be more capable when we returned to needing T&E more. And we got nominated for a Concur Innovation Award. And I just try to explain next a little bit about what happened in terms of our employees' rating of us as I show you a graph of our user experience. We measure out of 5. It is sort of a proxy NPS. A lot of the large companies like Amazon, etc., use the 5-star rating. We use it out of 5. We use Concur's methodology that comes out of 5. And during this period, you can see that our early transformation, we were doing okay on user experience, but we weren't great and we had some problems. We saved a bunch of hours, but that was because we were just improving the process. When we flipped to be much more customer oriented and say, how do we make this so easy for our customers that they love our way of operating our T&E, you can see what happened. We went in a significant upward curve, and 5 is the maximum we could achieve. We were achieving 4.7 by the end of Q3 this year in our user satisfaction rating. So you can see on the right some indications. We did save a lot of money. I haven't put it on the slide, but it's 6 figures. We've returned now over 18,000 hours of productivity to our organization. You see what happened to user satisfaction. And we went from a manual audit process to a very large proportion of our auditing is done by the Detect toolset. So.
That's great. Thank you very much, Phil. It's a great presentation. And with that, I would now like to hand over to Sam from AppZen.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to talk through how AI can be deployed to optimize processes, then really transform finance processes. So AI brings 3 unique benefits that haven't been available before to transform finance processes. Firstly, so you can see on the left there, AI can understand not only structured data, but also unstructured data. So by that, I mean like receipts, invoices, potentially tax documents, remittance slips, and those sorts of unstructured documents. Secondly, AI can enrich a paper trail with a lot more context, just like a human with a lot of time and energy would do. So it can look at the entire history of expenses and invoices for things like duplicates. It can then, automatically take it further and validate merchants, prices, suppliers, and individuals against any sort of publicly available information. So, for example, Google searches or Yelp, or maybe you want to look at a particular restaurant for a price band. It could also look at various databases, so internal and external. So for certain industries, pharmaceutical manufacturing, for example, you might want to check against healthcare professional databases in different countries, or maybe government employees, or maybe you want to check expenses and invoices against disbarred vendors or any sort of company proprietary information. So it's really quick and easy to enrich that paper trail with that context. Finally, unlike a team of people, AI never rests and it can scale infinitely. It applies the same level of checks, the same level of rigor to every expense, every invoice, every tax document. On the next slide, we'll look at the value pillars that AI offers for organizations. So really there's 3 buckets. The first is helping eliminate unnecessary spend by automatically, for example, detecting duplicates. This could be across all employees, across all systems, T&E, AP, and even different kinds of systems where perhaps you haven't got to a point where you've consolidated the systems that you use, or perhaps you've acquired organisations that are using different kinds of systems. But it can also look back as far as you need to find those duplicates. Another quite significant benefit actually we've found is you may not have kind of the resources and the expertise to cover all the different languages of the different countries that organisations operate in. With AI, automatically you've got sort of wider scope and you're able to identify out of policy spend in sort of 40 plus different languages, and therefore you're able to detect items which perhaps in the manual world are not able to do. The second value pillar is really eliminating the manual process and alleviating the human touch point and automatically enforcing policy. That's achieved by doing some of those things that we've mentioned already, by verifying attendees, both internal and external, potentially for specific expense types like meals, entertainment, gifts perhaps, and doing it in an automated manner and in real time, of course. And then also being able to drive policy changes by identifying various different compliance levels over time. So really identifying both user and supplier behaviour over a period of time. That's quite powerful. And then finally, I suppose the bucket value that we find delivers the biggest hard dollar cost saving is actually being able to decrease the workload and finance function. And, you're doing that by auditing 100% of spend prepayment, and also being able to speed up the approval process by potentially auto-approving all low and all non-risk spend, and just removing that unnecessary extra step in that workflow. And it also reducing kind of the burden on those teams, because the AI is working and turning around audits effectively in real time. So the end-to-end cycle, we've seen cases where we've been able to reduce it from what we think is quite low, in I guess T&E world, from sort of 2 weeks to under a day. And that's from submission to payment. So those are the three key value pillars. But when we look at the next slide, we know that to make changes, you need to have the resources to transform processes, to optimize processes. You need to have the resources correctly aligned. And we often see a misalignment of resources across a finance organizational pyramid. So what we tend to find is the bulk of resources are actually sat at the wide base of the pyramid, so doing transactional activities, record keeping, reporting and compliance. Of course, they're very, very foundational activities, but they don't necessarily add enormous value. So by spending so much time and so much resources getting these activities done, finance teams don't have the bandwidth to do as much of the activities right at the top of the pyramid, so that the financial planning, strategic planning. So there's a huge opportunity to drive mass efficiencies in that value creation that tends to be missed. So what steps can we take to fix that situation? So you'll see what the opportunity to use AI to drive this transformation of finance processes looks like. So you can shift that pyramid to something that looks like this and really rebalance it. So with automation and AI, we're reducing the resource requirements to do the transactional, the record keeping, the reporting and compliance, so you can then focus on the top two. And as Phil said earlier, you're giving back time to your employees to focus on execution of the strategy. So that's helping make that shift from being process orientated to customer orientated. So, in a nutshell, we do believe that it's worth thinking very hard about processes within business and look at the opportunities to alleviate the human effort wherever possible. So I just wanted to take a minute or two just to talk through the platform of services powered by AI. That's actually an offer from AppZen. So the AI technology that we offer sits across both T&E and AP processes. So it's got a very powerful data analytics tool that sits across both of those elements to give organizations a true and accurate visibility into spend. Our mastermind functionality offers the ability to get really custom with AI-powered audit rules. So not every organization is the same. There are some specific changes, whether it's based on industry or some other reason, that the organizations we work with want to check. and they're able to leverage the technology which is trained specifically for finance documents using Mastermind to create those custom rules that can audit in real time. And at the bottom there, you can see we offer pre-built integration to the world-class T&E and AP systems. So those are just some examples. What that really means is something like AppZen and trying to, we had a look at the survey and I think it was almost half the respondents were actually looking to transform their processes and were looking to use potentially AI to do that. So these pre-built integrations typically make AppZen basically a zero IT cost project. So no, that was a very, very quick kind of intro into how AI can be used to transform finance processes, but I hope it was useful.
Thank you very much, Sam. Big thank you to Phil for a fantastic presentation. It's a great story you had. You really walked us through the detail and how you've done it, and I really appreciate it. And Sam, thank you so much for your industry experience and some really insight to how AI is helping companies. And with that, we again like to thank Team AppZen and Phil and everyone on the webinar, and we look forward to welcoming you next time.